all the people are going to protect his property. There's Kyle's big orange gator box. He's got his pack on, filled with things, and he's willing to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle was not an active shooter. That is a buzzword that the state wants to lash onto because it excuses the actions of that mob on the 25th of 2020. Whenever Kyle was there, he reacted to people attacking him. There's numerous times, and you'll see him on the video, he does not shoot. He runs 2 blocks from 63rd to 61st Scene 2 without firing his weapon. Individual hits him in the back of the head. He does not turn around to address that threat. Huber takes a swing at him with the skateboard like that. Kyle blocks, and the skateboard's knocked out of his hand. He doesn't turn around and shoot him. He keeps running and falls from the 2 hits. He's run that far, and yet somehow he just fell over on his own. As soon as he's on the ground, they're there attacking him. And you see the people the law of self-defense. You've seen it, you've heard it. Now I'm going to go through the witnesses. Oh. Dominic Black, first witness, charged by Mr. Binger for providing the gun to my client. 2 counts, looking at up to 6 years in prison. His case has been adjourned so that he can help the state. I don't think he helped the state that much. I think he was a pretty truthful witness, all in all. He told them about Kyle there to help people, that they had permission from the Kandiris, that he saw Kyle help the woman with the foot, help the person with the hand. Mr. Binger wants to just say, oh, that doesn't matter. If it wasn't Kyle, it would have been somebody else. The point is, he was there and he did it. There was no pointing by Kyle of any laser sight. There was no ability for Kyle or him to point laser sights at anyone because their guns didn't have the type of optics that did that. He said Kyle was there to help. The only person helping was Kyle. And he can say what he wants about whether or not he let Kyle take the gun or not take the gun. He never told him not to. He went to the location with him. They bought straps at Jelensky's together. He's trying to cover his butt a little bit. The guns were there and they took them. They took the guns, as he said, to deter people attacking them. He saw Kyle at the end, sweating, was in shock, and said that he shot someone, he had to do it. That is Dominic Black. Corey Washington saw the rioters breaking up concrete at the church parking lot, described Rosenbaum as erratic, stated the crowd was suspicious. I don't know what that means. One of the things that I thought was strange was the night before they were burning garbage trucks, but they only burnt the old ones. I think that tells you something about his point of view, that there's a certain amount of property damage that is justified and okay. Kenosha was using those garbage trucks that the rioters lit on fire. And nothing regarding property destruction was going to do anything to help Jacob Blake. We also learned that Kyle Rittenhouse smokes cigarettes and that he has an affinity for the Dinosaur Museum. Detective Howard, ladies and gentlemen, Detective Howard's testimony and Detective Antaramian's testimony is the stuff of what reasonable doubt is made of. 2 detectives, both lead officers on this case. They've sat through every minute of this trial, and their opinions of the actions of Mr. Rosenbaum from testimony, videos, couldn't be more diametrically opposed. Detective Howard, on cross-examination, knew that the guy was hiding in the car and jumped out from behind the car and began chasing Kyle Rittenhouse. Oh boy, that's not good for the state's case. So there's the old chit-chat between Mr. Howard and Mr. Antaramian and the prosecutors after, and all of a sudden we've come up with the new theory. And you heard the new theory that he raised the gun, and that's what's on the video. Could I have the firearm, please? He told me he checked it.
When? After lunch? Before lunch. Check it again.
Think about when Kyle Rittenhouse is firing the gun, when he's seen holding the gun throughout the events of the 25th. Shouldering the gun, and I'm not going to bring it all the way up to my shoulder, to the right shoulder, which would be a stance like this. The reason I objected in his closing argument is because that's not the way he was standing. If he's standing like this is right-handed, pointing the gun this way, up at the ready, his back would be to the drone footage. In the drone footage, you see the arm. It would be somebody having to hold the gun left-handed. This is a right-handed firearm. If this gun is brought up to his face and it is pulled back, the shell casing, hot, and the fire that ejects it is going to be going right into Kyle's face. The photograph I'll talk about later. You don't see the straps on his shirt. It didn't happen the way he said. It doesn't happen the way in the photograph. I'm going to need this again. Burden of proof, once again. The telephones, the searching of telephones with search warrants, the subpoenaing of records. I have no problem with that. It's good police work. But when you pick and choose and you make favorites, it's not. My client testified, and I'll say it this way, the detective testified that my client's phone was sent to the FBI. It was unsearchable because of the operating system. The FBI and the federal government had not cracked it yet. We found out about that. We had nothing to hide. Here's the numbers. Search the phone. As long as we're given a simultaneous copy, so we have what you have, we can have our experts look at it. They can have their experts look at it. So we know that there isn't anything added or deleted. We did that. We gave that to the state. If we had something to hide, they never would have gotten in that phone. They took the phone, they made a copy, they searched it. Lo and behold, nothing of an incriminating nature in it, nothing militia, white supremacist, any of that. Gage Groskowitz, different story. They had a valid search warrant for it. The only search warrant that these guys have never not executed when it's sitting right in front of them. Not just that, but Mr. Groskowitz could have consented to them going in the phone. If he has nothing to hide, why not? Why not let them look in the phone? And let's take common sense and judgment one step. Information, that search warrant never comes out in court. If it's legal after a judge has said there were no rights violated, it comes in evidence. What was Mr. Groskowitz afraid of? Why wouldn't the state execute the search warrant, let Mr. Groskowitz and his attorney object, file a motion and say you can't go in my phone? Let the judge decide, not the person who's prosecuting and protecting Mr. Groskowitz. Come on, people. Mr. Groskowitz has 10 million reasons for not wanting somebody to go in his phone. The timing with the detectives and some of their actions, I think, are very important. They get down to Antioch at about 3:30 in the morning of the 26th, less than 4 hours after this happens. By 6 o'clock, 6:30, give them the benefit of the doubt, Kyle Rittenhouse is under arrest for first-degree murder. There's not been any autopsy done. There haven't been any witness statements taken. They've got 2 or 3 videos. The bullets, I should say it this way, all of the bullets have not even been picked up from car source at this point. But they're willing to make a decision. And were they under pressure? I'm sure they were. They're afraid that there's going to be another night of looting, destruction in Kenosha because of this happening and the way the word got out. He traveled across state lines. He was here. He brought his AR with him. The AR was here. He was a white supremacist. He brought his AR with him. The AR was here. He was a white supremacist looking for trouble. Nothing. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, when we picked you guys as jurors, we asked you if you could decide based upon the evidence that happens in the courtroom. Not what you'd heard before, not all of the lies and untruths that have been put out in the media. I heard one guy say, my client discharged the gun 60 times. Ladies and gentlemen, what's happening in court is what you decide the truth on. He was charged on the 27th. Still, they didn't have the information, the autopsy's final, anything like that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a rush to judgment. Richie McGinnis, I talked about earlier, citizen journalists. Mr. Binger talked about him seeing guns. But remember the cross of Mr. McGinnis. Guns are not legal in Portland, Washington, or DC or New York. They're not allowed on the streets. You can be arrested. There are state laws. And ladies and gentlemen, the gun in this case is no longer an issue. Whether or not it was a dangerous weapon as it applies to the charges is. But my client is no longer charged with minor in possession of a firearm. But he needs his AR-15 and the assault weapon and the fear that goes with that to try and bring home an unjust guilty verdict. Ryan Balch had never met Kyle Rittenhouse before the evening hours of the 25th, has never spoken to him or known him after. And yet the state wants you to believe he made up something about a threat to kill. Why? What's in it for him? The threat. If I get either of you alone, I will kill you. That is a threat with a statement and a promise. And lo and behold, the chance presented itself to Mr. Rosenbaum, and he attempted to execute it. And I don't for a minute believe that he would have done it if it was Mr. Balch, who's much bigger than my client, muscular, well-built, and much more assertive and forceful. Rosenbaum, like any, as he referred to him, I don't even know what he called him, a rag doll, whatever. But the little guy who gets beat up likes to go after the next littlest guy. He saw Kyle alone, and that's what he chose to. Or he could have been mistaken and thinking it was the other person at the ultimate that he went after and had to be held back. They were dressed very similarly, baseball caps, mask, and the only difference was the difference between shorts and a long pants. I can't answer that. Mr. Rosenbaum at this point, I guess, can't either. But you see Mr. Rosenbaum right around the time in question at that location, menacing with his chain. I skipped. That's Mr. Balch. I talked about him going on. There's Amber Rasmussen. She was the DNA expert. What I say to you is DNA is an incredibly useful tool, but DNA is only as useful as what you put into it. And if DNA shows anything, it shows that it's not proof positive in this case. We know, in hearing from Dr. Kelly, that he most probably touched the gun. It was a contact wound is the way he described it. And we know through the videos, Huber touched the gun with his bare hand, and yet no DNA was found on that gun. So don't let your eyes deceive you. Don't let the physical evidence be discounted because of what she said. The end of that barrel was not swabbed. And we know he had to be at the end of the barrel, or it would have had the soot on all of the fingers. Jason Lukowski, thought was an interesting witness. He was the Marine who put the phrase, shout, shove, show, shoot. And I asked him about that, and I don't for a minute disbelieve that that's the Marines' rule. Is there any retreat in there? He said no. He looked at me like I was stupid. The reason he looked like that was because they don't retreat. Yet Kyle Rittenhouse did retreat. He tried getting away from Mr. Rosenbaum. He described Joseph Rosenbaum as belligerent, with malintent, used the N-word, did the false step thing, did not see Kyle as aggressive. He was there for a shorter period of time than anyone else at Car Source. He also cleared Gage Grosquist's gun after the shooting and made it safe, took the shell out of it. And I ask you to think back to the direct examination of Mr. Lukowski by the state. When they asked him, what did Kyle say to you? His first statement was, I just shot somebody, I need help. That's what he testified to. And then Mr. Binger shows him the statement and gets him to say, well, I told the FBI that. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what he told the FBI. The FBI doesn't let him see that statement, doesn't let him read the statement and say, you've read this to me, it's true and a correct copy. They write down what they think they heard. I ask you to think about what he said. If he didn't shoot somebody, why does he need help? That makes no sense. He said it, he testified to it. That's what happened. The state confronted him and pushes him back to his original statement so he doesn't get in trouble. He put the tourniquet on Gage Grosquist. He testified that he had his AR-15 with him, providing medical services, first aid, just like Kyle Rittenhouse. And I find it so ironic that he was there. Gage Grosquist had said to them, go home, we have our own medics, you stooges. And who ultimately helps him with his tourniquet? Sarah Hughes, her testimony, she reminded Mr. Huber and his girlfriend they needed to be home by curfew. Obviously, not advice that was followed. Wish it had been. Carrie Ann Swart, I talked about. She talked about Joseph Rosenbaum being bipolar, being prescribed gabapentin. He had to leave her house that night after walking 4 miles, taking about an hour, and then walking another 4 miles back to downtown where the riots were going on, where he could involve himself fully. Her story contradicts Nathan DeBrune. When he said, I just got out of jail and I'm not afraid to go back. He'd been off his meds for the week prior. The videos of Joseph Rosenbaum show the state that he was in. No proof that he ever took his meds. Saul Kindiri, he was the first of the Kindiri brothers to testify. Car source. He's in the picture with all the people who protected his property. He's there, and he said he just liked the military garb. Why did he get a picture then with just one of them? How did he wrangle all these people up? Everybody in that picture said that they wanted him there, they gave him permission. Even Dominic Black concurred in that, the state's witness. But as I said earlier, they want these two guys to dirty Kyle up. He's just picking a spot to pick trouble and to be there and cause problems. He was asked to provide security. He did. They deny that they were going to pay any money, yet Nick Smith says they were. And going to pay money to Nick Smith. And ladies and gentlemen, do you get the feeling that they're a little afraid of being sued, as everybody else in this case is? I think so. And when they were up there, I don't remember them saying, oh, you can protect car source 2 or car doctor, but don't go to car 3. They had somebody arranged to protect car source 3, and the word came in that they had left. Dominic, Balch, Joanne Fielder, all of them say they had permission. Why would they lie about that? How does that protect them? They're not charged with anything. Who's the people who are lying here? Sal and Sam. Next, Police Officer Widener. He was the ET. He went and recovered some of the 2-3 rounds from car source. I believe he found 3 of them. The other 2 were found 3 days later. He photographed a mask. He didn't find the bag, and we do not concede that there was nothing in that bag. Not for a minute. They have the burden of proof. They have the burden to preserve a crime scene appropriately, get the evidence, and show it to you. Ryan Balch said he smelled ammonia and bleach. They didn't find the fire extinguisher. We know that the fire extinguisher was there. It's in the videos. But that doesn't fit in the state's narrative of Kyle actually going there to put out a fire, which had been started earlier in the Duramax. Officer Van Wee recovered the last 2 shell casings. Strike that. Technology. Officer Van Wee. Officer Moretti. He was the driver of the squad car that Kyle tried to surrender himself to. He said it was a war zone. It was a war zone those 3 nights. He described it as the city on fire. The police felt as though they were completely surrounded, described the constant gunfire that evening. Mr. Binger wants to slough it off as fireworks this. It really wasn't that bad that night. Ladies and gentlemen, it was hell in this area downtown. There were violent people causing trouble. And the state wants us to believe it was okay. The police pushed them back. Now they could leave. Car source was safe. And I can't remember specifically what witness it was, but it stuck out in my mind. witness said the police pushed him back, let him back, pushed him back, let him back. And a lot of the burning happened late at night, that witness said. Gage Grosskreutz, 10 million reasons to change his statement. His attorney is sitting in the courtroom, has been sitting in the courtroom when he testified. If he's just your average complaining witness, why get a lawyer? What do you got to hide? He didn't have a valid concealed carry permit. He wasn't charged. He lies to the police about being armed that night. He said he dropped his gun going down the street. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what's called obstructing. Most people, when you lie to the cops, especially in a murder investigation, you get in a little bit of trouble. I've represented some of those people. Not Mr. Grosskreutz, because he's their star witness. Bought, paid for, and protected. You don't want us to search your phone? Oh, we're going to invoke the never heard before Marcy's Law exception to the search warrant, even though they had a signed search warrant by a judge of Kenosha County. He was also an armed medic. Wants you to believe that he didn't have one in the chamber and he would never shoot somebody. But before he said that, he said, key, wallet, phone, gun. Never leaves the home without him. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't carry a concealed weapon. And I don't think I could shoot somebody. But when people carry guns, that's what they're for in the city. This isn't the wild, wild west. He had his gun. Kyle Rittenhouse had run by him. You'll see the picture. Was by him, gone. Did he go to give medical help? He didn't know that Mr. Rosenbaum was being tended to. No, he decided to run in and advance on the fray. He, affiliated with the American People's Revolution here in Wisconsin. And I might have that one word wrong, but he did it. And who ultimately put the tourniquet and fixed it on his arm? But Mr. Lukowski, a member of somebody he refers to as the militia and the Stooges.
Thank you again to all of our viewers watching here with us. You can see in that live watch box, we do have President Biden signing the $1 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into